Welcome to Copy Chief Radio. Today's show is a freelancer's journey episode where successful freelancers share the tactical moves that catapulted their careers through the phases of the freelancer's journey. To see all 7 phases, where you are now, and how to move forward, head over to copychief.com/phases. To check out all the Copy Chief Radio episode types, go to copychief.com/CCR. My favorite kind of episode today, a freelancer's journey with my friend Kev Kaye. Kev is someone that I've known for years. We did a lot of work together a few years back. I had the privilege of coaching Kev for a while, and he was doing really cool stuff then. And as it does, time slipped by rather quickly, and we're just reconnecting. And he is in a much later phase. He's in like phase 5 going into phase 6. Really just want to hear his journey. I know it'll inspire a lot of people. He's one of the first people, probably, Kev, in my coaching that really embraced the idea of specializing and understood how important that was. So thanks for doing this. Really appreciate you being here, man.
Of course, Kevin. Glad to be here. And just let me just say, you look amazing. It's great to connect. It's good to be here.
Thanks, buddy. Likewise, man. I usually don't share video. I don't know if they'll see, but your studio space is amazing. You're in downtown Rochester, New York. I can see other cool, like historic buildings, it looks like, through your window. That is awesome.
Yeah, cool. Appreciate it.
Is Rochester where you grew up?
Rochester is born and raised. Had a couple stints outside of Rochester, but came back and rooted here once we started to have a family back in Rochester.
That's nice. So grandparents are there, and you got the full spectrum.
Yep, grandparents, cousins, aunts, uncles, everybody. So holidays are amazing.
It's the best, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a good time. So
cool. And so 2 kids, young kids, obviously a wife. Good job keeping that together. You didn't goof that up. You know what happens sometimes in this entrepreneurial thing. And so just take us back. I'm curious, Kev, like, were you always entrepreneurial, sort of independent minded, or did you go through the rigmarole of trying to do the standard way of earning a living?
I was always entrepreneurial. I mean, I started my first, and I say with giant quotes, my first company when I was like 11. And that was basically me going downtown to the county clerk and filing a DBA as Cajun North. No idea what I was going to do and sell, but I was a business.
Wow.
And always,
that is cool.
Was always entrepreneurial and always wanted to find work that I really enjoyed. Just through that path, always learned. It was a funny story growing up through high school, even through college. Like, I was never the greatest student. I was like your typical, just like C student. Mm-hmm. But when I found something I really liked and enjoyed, I went deep. I mean, I always make the joke. When I was in college, my first semester, I was failing all my classes. But then over Christmas break, I picked up books on stock trading and was teaching myself finance and the markets. And it's like, well, it was always about finding stuff that I really like, finding stuff that I really enjoy, and always had an entrepreneurial skew to it, for sure.
Right. Very interesting. Did that speak to you then? Like, did it feel like that was an option to find your own way to make money? Or is it still like, this is just how I am? I like to learn.
I was blessed. My mom always encouraged it and always would point out in the world, like, there's an opportunity for a business there, right? There's an opportunity to do this thing. I remember she bought me denim to sew wallets that I could sell. Or she was having a garage sale, and she was like, hey, why don't you package up some of your basketball cards and sell them? I was always blessed to have that and kind of have that voice in my ear, letting me know that like there is that possibility and there's that path for sure.
But your parents, did they have businesses?
No, they were both state employees. My dad worked for the state. My mom was a teacher. Lifers, just employment. Yeah. So no, the family doesn't really have entrepreneurial history. If anything, it's more academic teaching. Yeah. My grandpa was a college professor, and that was more the norm in the family.
Interesting. And so you prove the model how to the point where you sort of develop a money skill and see that, you can consistently get paid for it.
Yeah. So in terms of how I got here, my first skill that I started getting paid for in marketing was writing copy. I had taught myself web design, but never really got paid for it. I remember reading big fat books, teaching myself HTML and CSS. And then I discovered WordPress and realized like I didn't need to do that. But I started writing copy for a family friend. So I was living down in Florida, working in the golf business, grew up always playing competitive golf, and spent a couple of winters down in Naples, Florida. And the first winter I was down there, I was living with a buddy of mine, and his dad came down for a week to hang out. And he shows up and he's kind of working, but kind of on vacation. And we're sitting at the table and he flips open his laptop and he's scrolling through these spreadsheets. I'm curious. I'm like, what's that? They have all these numbers. They have big numbers on the spreadsheets. What's that? He's like, we just started a business selling marketing kits to hair salons. He owned a salon back in Rochester, and he put together a marketing system. So it turns out his brother, my friend's uncle, is a pretty well-known behind the scenes direct response copywriter.
Oh, interesting.
We had partnered up and started a business, an info product business, and it got my interest. And it was through that and through seeing the reality of what an info product direct response business could do and the numbers, I knew that like that was what I wanted to do. I remember the moment in Florida. We were sitting back on the patio at night. We were playing poker, smoking cigars, having a good time. And it came to me like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to do marketing. I want to write words that sell, that influence people and get them to take an action.
And that's something. I mean, you just think if that moment wouldn't have happened, if you weren't curious, if he hadn't opened his laptop,
Totally.
Was he a Kennedy guy, a Dan Kennedy?
So funny story. I didn't realize at the time. So his brother was in Dan Kennedy's first workshop. Dan Kennedy was doing his beta version of his workshop in that workshop. And so they teamed up, and we're going back like Jeff Paul days. He's good friends with Joe Polish, like in those circles.
All roads lead to Dan Kennedy. I'm like figuring out. I mean, It's just, It's so funny. Like I have a somewhat similar story. I think the seed there, and this is maybe an important stop along the highway here of this journey, is to point out curiosity is key. I had this question, Kev, like when I left comedy and didn't know what the heck I was going to do, where I was like, what is business? Like, what is that? Like, what is it? I just don't, I know that's the key. Anybody I know who I feel is successful and happy in what they do is doing something in business, but I don't even know what that even looks like. My uncle was the person in my life who was a successful business person. I remember I just wanted to talk to anybody I knew who I thought understood business and sort of like why some people give other people money for things. And so I asked for a meeting with him, and I thought he thinks for sure I'm going to ask him for money. Like, I know he does, and he's like, we'll have lunch. And so I show up to meet him, and he immediately like basically wants to rebut what he assumes is my request. And he says, listen, I just want to say whatever you're thinking or whatever you have in mind, the only way a business can succeed is if it has a really good marketing plan. And I said, well, Jerry, I'm really glad to hear you say that because I want to be the guy who creates the marketing plans. And suddenly he was like, oh, wow, well, that's great news. And the pressure was off, and I just picked his brain, for an hour. And so, but I think you and I, the thing we had in common with it seems like a light bulb moment now looking back, but we had this desire to understand why are some people able to manufacture this and we don't know what that is yet.
Totally. 100%. And also from a provider's perspective, I always thought like, how do I put myself in a position to provide as much value as possible? Like, how do I make myself as valuable in the transaction as possible? Yeah. And that was ultimately what gravitated me towards marketing and understanding that of like, that's a really important, a really valuable seat and skill to have, that when you have it, it brings a certain level of just certainty and predictability in your life.
Yeah. It makes it a lot easier to quote unquote sell the service because it basically comes down to math.
Totally. Yeah. You get to communicate through spreadsheets.
Yeah. Does it make sense or not? It's yes or no. And then, if you have struggle paying somebody to do something that you can see should produce the desired result, then it might be a no, but it's not because the data says it should be a no. That's your own issue. And that's easy for me to move on from. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so growth is your thing and was your thing then. We were talking a minute ago about how that idea, that concept, that title has evolved in the market now. But you are always, I remember, very focused on outcomes.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's on two different levels. One, that's how you provide the most value. And I always got the most excited about that. I mean, that hits on just a human level of wanting to be effective, right? And provide value. There's a lot of just satisfaction and fulfillment that comes out of that. And also just building stuff that's useful, for sure. Yeah. And focus on outcomes and putting together systems that can help someone achieve that outcome. There's this thing that happens. I remember having conversations with prospective clients, and it still happens today, when they come to you with a particular problem and it's like, we need copy or we need email sequences. And you evolve the conversation to like, actually what you need is a growth strategy that makes those emails work, right?
Right.
You need some way to fill it. And the experience of being able to provide that and have that conversation is what gets me excited and really creates work that's satisfying.
Ask any experienced freelancer and they'll tell you that getting started and landing those first few clients, it's the hardest part. If you're struggling to find consistent work, you want to build more confidence in your skills, or you're just starting out in your freelance journey, don't worry. That's exactly why I created Escape Velocity. It's my step-by-step coaching program for how to kickstart a freelance career, attract quality clients, and confidently deliver great work. Let me help you find and close good gigs so you can quickly launch and grow a successful and sustainable freelance writing business. Learn more at copychief.com/EV. copychief.com/EV. I'll see you there. Let's talk a little bit about that work. Like, what does it typically look like? What's a lay down situation for you where you're like, oh, I'm about to change your world?
Yep, for sure. So it's usually a client's coming to me who has an offer that's validated. They have a product that works. They have a service that works, and they want to grow and scale, but they don't see the path to doing it. They probably have some suspicions about what the pieces are, but they don't understand how those pieces fit together, right? And so, cool. Do we want to run Facebook ads to get more customers? Maybe, but how does that work, right? What's the funnel that you're dropping someone into? What's the follow-up sequence? What's the sales process? What's the product? Is that aligned with what it is that you need in order to hit your goals? And so when they're coming with suspicions, but they're really clear on what they want. We want to do $1 million next year. We want to do $5 million next year. We want to do $25 million next year. Let's put together a growth marketing strategy to help us get there. That's a lay down situation for sure.
At this point in your business, how active are you in that process?
So currently transitioning from more of a done for you after years of dialing in the system. I have IP that I've developed through that process, and transitioning more to a done with you consulting type of model with it. And it comes on two levels. One, I'm doing that because I want to impact more people and help more people with it. Two, I have a belief that I think today and going forward, building these capabilities in-house for different companies and not necessarily outsourcing it is what the trend is. And so making sure I'm playing a role on both of those fronts. Also more of a consulting done with you type of setup.
So you come in, you audit, you see what's missing, you agree on goals, you create the plan, and then you basically fill seats with people who probably they would hire on staff or as vendors to copywriters, whatever else it is, ad management people to fulfill your plan.
Yeah, that's a step on the roadmap, right? So we come in, there's really three pillars that we look at the business on. So in terms of its positioning in the market, right? I call it eminent positioning, making sure that you're positioned as a high demand, high value type of offer. Next, we're looking at your marketing systems. I like to build marketing systems that are controllable, that are more built on advertising, that you can turn an ROI, you can pull a lever, gives you a little bit more control. You can be more scientific with it. And then building email systems around that. And then the third is the simplicity of what you deliver and making sure that the product is valuable. It's producing outcomes that are amazing and exciting. Typically, we see people when they're in a business that's too complex, client results, customer results start to suffer. The business has a ceiling on it. And so we look at those three things: their positioning, their marketing systems, the delivery of their service. We find where the bottlenecks and the gaps are, put together a specific roadmap, and then we work together on implementing them. I think the long-term vision for them is to have people in those seats, but typically they also need to get scrappy and do what they need to do in the short term to open up those bottlenecks and create the systems.
But you oversee all that. You're sort of involved in a week to week. I know it probably varies, but
it is. So it's week to week, a lot of conversations with clients. So I'll have I do have a couple times blocked off on my calendar that people can book time to talk with me. They have one-to-one access with me through, a walkie-talkie app like Voxer. And we're working through, and a lot of times it's helping them think about the growth of the business and the systems that they need. And then once they have that clarity, then here are the frameworks to implement and build those pieces. There's a little bit of custom one-to-one with it, but it's all through the frameworks and the IP that's been developed over time.
That's super cool, man. That's exciting. And so let's talk about some case studies, when it goes well and when it falls apart.
Yeah. So 2 case studies when it goes well. One is a leadership coach. So his name's Sam. He came to me and he landed upon this idea of leadership coaching. He's in Silicon Valley, had a lot of connections in the tech world, and started offering leadership training services to technical leaders. Now, think of a technical leader as someone that's a software developer. They're so good at their job that they get promoted, and now they have to lead people. And it's like, oh, software developers don't usually have leadership and people skills.
Right.
So he coaches them on how to do that. And so he had gotten initial traction and wanted to grow, but was still largely tied to trading time for money, was still tied to doing a bunch of different things in the consulting space. And so how do we establish him and position him as the go-to leadership consultant for technical leaders? And so we did that by dialing in a program. That's one. And then 2, building a marketing system to get clients over and over again, right? So he has a program called Mindful Leadership. He has an outlier advantage. It's unique. And from there, he came to me with that idea basically from scratch, and he's on track to do about $1 million.
Is that his full-time business now, or is that?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has 2 programs. So he works one-to-one with leaders that we worked on. And he also has corporate clients that come to him that want him to train their whole leadership executive team, for 6-figure sums to do that.
Very cool. And how did he find you?
I was creating content. I was publishing content in the growth space. He found me. He was in Silicon Valley. We linked up by being a creator, by putting content out into the world. He found me. He was on my email list, and we linked up.
It's another thing I remember about you. You're early adopter and fruitful producer of authority content.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's one of the, talking about fruitful producer, it's definitely low hanging fruit, right? Of like, go out, create content, be seen, and just trust. This is something that has always been hard for me, of like, trust that if you put this out into the world will respond and an opportunity will come to you.
It really is a faith-based project. Chris Warzakowski says the same thing. Is like, Kevin told me to do it, so I just kept doing it. There were a lot of days I didn't want to. There were a lot of times I thought no one was listening. And now it's like, you can't stop the flood when it comes.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, it happened to me last week. Somebody just reached out to me to work together. And I was like, how did this person find me? They just filled out a form that's not even live. And it was because like they found this like secret form and this like really in-depth application. I was like, this looks like a great prospect. I have no idea how he found this. Up on the phone, he goes, oh, hey, this person, Emily just referred me to you. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just randomly saw Emily like 2 weeks ago. And like the world just responds in these weird ways. And producing content sort of like, it's like a spin wheel, and it's like you're blowing the spin wheel with your content.
Just it's a good way to look at it. Yeah. It's like a little vehicle that's just, or maybe like one of those robot vacuums that's just a messenger for you out in the world. But, it's fueled by the energy you're putting into your work. And sometimes it just bumps into people who need to know about it. And it's like, sends up a hologram and they,
Yep. Sure.
it's amazing. It really is. So cool. Okay. So what happens? What have you learned about someone maybe in the past you would have thought, oh, this is a good opportunity. It turns out now you avoid those.
In terms of prospective clients?
Yeah.
I think there's a couple things. So one, do they trust my expertise? Are they coming to me for my knowledge and expertise? And do they trust it? Do they value it? And are they going to be receptive to the recommendations that I have? And so I have two conversations that immediately come to mind. One is a conversation I just had with the client. They were a prospective client. They're now an active client, where we went through and I was training them in the sales process. And I was showing them my frameworks and they were very receptive to it. They're asking really good questions and they're interested in how to implement that in their business. Counter to another client in the sales process where we're talking and having conversations. And when I make recommendations, there's usually like excuses of like, oh, well, like, this is just what we need. This is why that's the case. And you can just start to see the red flags, the pushback of like, okay, what's going to happen when like you're paying me for recommendations, you're paying me for this, and then you don't like it, or you have objections based on your own lens of the world. Those are definitely red flags.
Yeah, for sure. And it's great. What system have you created that you might not have had before to vet that?
I have a filtration process. I call it my admission funnel. So it's a matter of, A, did they consume something that I created before they hopped on the phone with me? Did they consume something? I can say without a doubt that people that have consumed either a video or an article of mine before they hopped on the phone, hands down are the best prospective clients. Next level is if they're using the language that I used in that piece on the phone with me, even better. So that's one, did they consume content? And so you have to create content for people to be able to do that. You need to create those assets. And then two is to capture some data ahead of time. So having an application, right? I call it like flipping the sales process on its head and turning it into an admission process. And so people are applying to work with you.
Right.
Like that idea came from a conversation I had with my wife. I was like, you know what? You know who has it figured out? Harvard has it figured out. They have thousands upon thousands of people from all over the world sending in applications to attend so that when they attend, they can pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to go there. Right.
Right.
It should be the same for your business.
That's brilliant. And if you think about it, it's like, what has Harvard done? Okay, yeah, they've had some hits, but they have managed through essentially marketing to make it a prestigious thing. It's really about pride of the parents, probably more than the kids, especially these days, and connections.
Yep. It's their position. Their positioning in the higher education market, for sure, has gotten them the privilege of being able to do that.
Wow. That's a great way to look at it. And so the simple thing for you was it's got to be inbound. It's got to be coveted. I'm not available to any taker, and let it be clear. Like there's rules of engagement and it starts with this application.
For sure. Yeah. And there's little tests that I say tests loosely. They're not like hard and strict, but you can pick up things in communication.
Does that involve you doing like a small paid, almost like a test project, or just conversations over?
Just through conversation, just through the interaction and how it is, through email, things like that. You can kind of see how it might go. So
cool, man. I'm really excited that you're at this place. And I guess so looking back, if you were talking to someone who's in like a phase, 2, they're getting paid. Maybe they're looking at phase 3 where there's like, okay, I got to stop being addicted to yes and taking anything that comes along and sort of like set my own standard. Talking to young Kev back then, like what would you tell him?
Yeah, a couple things. From a more general, like tactical, practical perspective of like immerse yourself in people that are doing what you want to do, get around it, like just scale the believability mountain as quick as possible, right? I had the privilege of being around people early. So like belief, like wasn't an issue. So make sure you're around people actually doing it. So you just have that belief taken care of. And then 2, create a vision. It doesn't have to be a huge vision, but create a vision for yourself of what you want to do and who you want to work with, and write it out and actually articulate it. Write it on a piece of paper. Yeah. These are the types of clients I want to work with. These are the types of outcomes I want to produce. This is why I want these things. Like for me, when I was doing that, we're doing that work. Like my vision was to get married, was to have kids, to buy a house. And then the kicker was like, this was my stretch goal, was like, be able to have my wife stay home with my kids. Like that was the kicker. Because my wife always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom and we wanted to parent our kids. And like, that was the dream. That was like the stretch. Like, I don't know, like a house and she stays home with the kids. Yeah. Like, and then it happened. I was like, oh my gosh, like now what? Like, now what do we do?
Yeah.
But yeah, having the vision of like why you want to do that.
Yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? Yeah. So similar, except for my wife and I, like I wasn't smart enough, I don't think, to sit down and like write it out. We just talked about it and practically said, you know, this is, and it kind of happened because I was in a job that was paying me pretty good. When I found copywriting, my big challenge was replacing that income fully. And so that's kind of a favor sometimes when somebody has a high existing standard to meet with their day job. Obviously makes it a little harder to get there, but you'll start out at a good place. You can't work for cheap for very long when that's what you need, right?
Right. Out of necessity, for sure.
Did you ever have jobs along the way? Were you like,
yeah, I mean, I went to college a bunch of times. and so the last time when I graduated, I took a job for 3 months. It was at a digital sign company. And I was there for 3 months. And then that was when I got my first like reliable freelance copywriting gig. And I was like, I don't need this job anymore.
Like, yeah.
Work to me was always really important because it's such a big part of your life. And it was really important to be a good husband, be a good dad, right? Be a good friend, and always wanted
productive citizen. Yeah.
Yeah. And always wanted work that I enjoyed and could wake up and get excited about. So that was always something that I was, prioritizing.
You weren't looking to avoid work. Yeah. You wanted to embrace your work.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, being excited and being passionate about what I'm doing, like it lights you up. Like I can't even explain it. Like there are times I'll work hours that people think I'm crazy, but it's like, no, like, does LeBron James complain about playing a game on Sunday? Like, no, right? Like he's doing what he loves.
Looks forward to going to practice. He's like,
yeah,
I gotta kill time until I can get to the gym, right? Yeah. That's awesome, dude. Very exciting. Where do people who aren't allowed to work with you come learn more about you?
So growthbox.com would be best. So that's growthboks.com. They can go ahead and hop on the email list. I'm putting content out there and people can reach out. We can talk. It's cool.
You can talk to Kev. Don't be afraid of it.
Oh yeah.
It's not a walled fortress. There aren't armed soldiers, but you got to have the password to get in.
Totally. I mean, yeah, totally. I love having conversation. I love connecting. That's why I do it. So I get a lot of fulfillment out of the relationships for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing this, man. It's an exciting journey and you're at a really cool place in it. And I hope we can circle back even a year from now and just see what you decide to do now that you're more of a free man with really getting to call the shots in the position you're in. It's exciting.
Love it. Yeah. I would love to come back, on top of us working together. I'm starting to morph and evolve into Kevin Rogers 2.0. I got the haircut. You can't see on the camera. I got the neck. Right. I think in a year I'll have the beard and it'll be dialed
right
in.
Now you don't need the beard. You're fortunate. Your face can handle a bald head. Good for you, man. That's rare. Good stuff. Thanks, Kev. We'll talk soon, man.
All right. You got it, Kevin. Appreciate it.
Hey, don't forget your goodies. Head over to copychief.com/copychiefradio to get some great free stuff to help you put the things you hear on the show into action for your business. Copychief.com/CCR.